is in continuation of my first Ferguson video, which was titled What Really Happened in Ferguson, Missouri, August 9th, 2014. One quick clarification. I perhaps put out two different vibes or sentiments, which for some just might amount to me contradicting myself. I didn't mean to do so. And here's something a little more concrete. How I finished that video is how I feel. The vibe I perhaps gave off toward the beginning, when I mentioned something about the witness protection program, is something along the lines of, worst case scenario, something like, hey, we the people should at least punish the guy this much, if not more. Anyway, I filmed What Really Happened in Ferguson, August 9th, 2014, on October 27th. In that short film, I think I made a pretty strong case for Darren Wilson unholstering his gun before he began any kind of physical struggle with Mike Brown and or Darian Johnson. Then on November 26th, a month later, George Stephanopoulos interviewed Wilson. If you haven't done so already, go watch my Ferguson video and watch the full interview of Wilson and Stephanopoulos. I'll list other links in the linky place down there. But one of the better vids of this interview is called, quote, Darren Wilson, George Stephanopoulos, full 45-min interview, period. Darren Wilson, ABC News breaks silence, end quote. And that's by Breaking News and Political Videos. Note, it is from that video that the following timestamps are where the quotes in question are located. Around the 6:25 mark, when asked if he tried to pull Mike Brown into his car, Wilson answers in a vague, diverting way, instead of answering directly. He answers, that would be against every training ever taught to any law enforcement officer. Then Stephanopoulos asks or says, didn't happen. It's not really a question. What Stephanopoulos says there is more of a leading answer, like, here's where you're supposed to say no, like we talked about before, remember? Anyway, Stephanopoulos says, didn't happen. And Wilson responds, no, it did not. This exchange is sort of like a straw man followed by a burning down of that straw man. What witnesses had said is they saw Wilson grab Mike Brown by the throat. Did we just hear that, though? Did we just hear a question like, hey, did you grab Mike by the throat? Answer, no, I did not. We think we heard that exchange, subconsciously or semi-consciously. We think we just covered the grabbing of the throat issue, but we didn't. The question, did you, Officer Wilson, ever grab Mike Brown by the throat, never got asked. But we sort of feel like it got asked and answered, with Wilson confirming that he didn't grab Brown by the throat. But see, Wilson never said he didn't grab Brown by the throat. This avoidance tactic is what psychologists have taught us is a tactic that is occasionally used by those who are lying. That's my minor proof that it's time people paid attention to the case I made against Wilson in my first video. My major proof that I got it right, that Wilson unholstered his gun much sooner than he intimates that he unholstered it, is as follows. Sample number 2, same avoidance tactic. Around the 11:45 mark, when asked, where was your gun at that point, Wilson avoids answering that question, and he instead answers another question. The question that he answers, the question that was never asked, is this: where do you normally keep your gun? Wilson's answer to the question of where was your gun at that point was, I keep it on my right hip, which basically is this: I normally keep it on my right hip, or My gun is normally or usually located on my right hip. Okay, so then what happened, George asked. I had take it out, and he swallows taken. If it's taken with an N on the end, he swallows that N for some reason. And psychologists looking for liars could help us here too. But here's what I hear him say is, I had take it out, and I come up, and I pointed at him, answered Wilson. Notice how we don't have a clear notion of when that gun had been taken out of its holster. This is crucial, folks. This is critical. I maintain that Wilson must have taken his gun out of its triple retention holster moments or minutes before he began interacting physically with Brown and or Johnson. I maintain that Wilson was pointing his gun at Brown while he was choking Brown and pulling Brown toward his gun and into his cruiser through his open window. After their physical struggle began, there simply wasn't enough time for Wilson to go through the three-step process to unholster his weapon from its triple retention holster, then proceed to step 4, which is aiming, and then go to step 5, which would be shooting with confidence at the human he was aiming at. Again, I go through this in much more detail in my previous video. While watching this part of the video, though, with George coaxing Wilson along a very precarious path, notice how blithely and quickly Wilson intimates that he can and allegedly did pull out his weapon. And this is around the 11:50 mark. Remember, he's like a 5-year-old who is in the process of one-handing a guy as big and as powerful as Hulk Hogan. And Wilson is able to one-hand this behemoth while he goes through the three-step process of unholstering and etc. Step 4 aiming, step 5 shooting, as mentioned above. Something else that I didn't mention in my previous video, I'm not 100% for sure on this, but wouldn't a right-handed officer, while reaching for and unholstering his weapon that is fastened to his right hip, wouldn't he have to lean somewhat to his left to facilitate this unholstering, which in this scenario would involve him leaning into or toward a huge black man that is throwing a barrage of punches at him, many of those blows landing on his face, allegedly. That left hand must have been like a crew of kung fu fighters, fast as lightning, or however that song from the 70s put it. Or, like I maintained in my first video, that left hand was tightly gripping Brown's windpipe, choking him, pulling him this way and that. I have more. But I don't want to just wing it. I find it supremely disheartening that the grand jury failed to indict, and that the feds won't, or at least right now they are saying they won't charge Wilson with violating Brown's civil rights. Juror 40 definitely needs to be discussed. The jury rigging of the grand jury needs to be discussed. Go look at my notes in the description box of the first vid in this series to see what I mean about jury rigging. There's really a lot more to cover, well, like MRAs and MGTOW, all but completely avoiding this topic, this historic event, crying about Gamergate instead, calling Ferguson the distraction and Gamergate the real issue. Oh my God. Who are these people? Oh no, we're not white supremacists. We're just cute little MRAs. We're just going our own way. Anyway, there's a lot more to cover, but just working too hard at work these days. Just all out of gas. I'll try to finish up this series soon.